Hi, welcome to On the Fly, the show that takes you to local fly fishing destinations. I'm your host, Lee Smith. Most of us that fish for trout know about the conservation efforts of Trout Unlimited, and many of us are members. If you're not familiar, Trout Unlimited is an outdoor conservation organization that's about 55 years old. TU works to keep our country's cold water fisheries and their watersheds safe from environmental threats for all of us to enjoy. TU is guided by the principle that if we take care of the fish, then the fishing will take care of itself. There are about 150,000 TU members in the U.S. and about 400 chapters nationwide. Over 30 are in the state of New York. Tonight our guest is Mark Searle, Secretary of Mid-Hudson Trout Unlimited, which is based in Poughkeepsie, New York. Mark, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for the invitation, Lee.
Welcome. Listen, why don't you start off by giving us a little history about the chapter?
Sure. The Mid-Hudson Chapter of Trout Unlimited was formed in 1978, and basically it was an offshoot. It was a spin-off of the Catskill Mountain chapters that was meeting in Kingston at that time. And ostensibly what happened is a number of individuals who were from Dutchess County, they got tired of driving to Kingston and they decided they wanted to form a chapter more local to them. So that's how the chapter came about. And their secondary concern was the Catskill Mountain chapters was focusing almost exclusively on the watersheds of the Catskill Mountains. And these guys felt that the watersheds of the Dutchess County area really needed more attention. So it was those two issues that brought up about the formation of the chapter in 1978.
Oh, that's great. Tell me a little bit more about the chapter today as far as number of members, your monthly meetings, and that type of thing.
Right now we have 240 members. Our catchment area is just Dutchess County.
Okay.
Our meetings are monthly throughout the year, except for the month of August, which is a vacation month.
Sure.
And we meet on the third Monday of every month at 7:30 p.m. at the American Legion Hall on DeGarmo Road in Poughkeepsie.
Great, great. So tell me a little bit about what are some of your major events during the year?
Oh, several, Lee. It's really difficult to start. One of the first things that's coming up in the new year on the 17th of January is our Trout Unlimited Day at the Galleria Mall in Poughkeepsie.
Okay.
And basically that's just an information sharing opportunity to get our name out in front of the public, and then also to share with people about our upcoming fly fishing and fly tying schools. Following the Galleria Day, in March is our national banquet. And this is our big fundraiser for the year. This year it's going to be on the 27th of March at Arbor Ridge, the Arbor Ridge Caterers in Hopewell Junction.
Okay. And what about as far as stream cleanup or anything along those lines?
Absolutely. During the early part of the year, we'd have a number of stream cleanups, and we do cleanups on all the major watersheds within the county, on the Wappingers Creek system, on the Fishkill Creek system, and then in the northern part of Dutchess County, along the Roloff-Jansen Kill. The dates for those programs, though, have not been set yet because it's a little too early. We really want to wait and see what are the water conditions come the middle of March, the latter part of March, and then we'll establish a schedule for cleanups.
Okay, so later in 2015.
Yes.
In this particular
the first
case.
quarter of 2015, a lot of scheduling happens.
Great, great. So I know that unlike some of the other chapters that may sponsor a specific river, that Mid-Hudson actually sponsors quite a few waters. I know you sponsor Wappingers Creek, the Fishkill, 10 Mile River, and I had actually never heard of Roloff-Jansen Kill before you mentioned it to me. I know you've brought some maps there with you. I was wondering if you could just walk us through each of these briefly, maybe tell us a little bit about the river itself, the types of fish that are found in there, maybe some of the flies that are popular on these rivers, best times to fish, and that type of thing, yes.
Okay. Well, taking a look here, this is a map of Dutchess County, and I've highlighted in different colors the major watersheds of the county. The Wappingers Creek, which runs through the center part of the county, is highlighted in green. And that watershed covers roughly 75% of the county. So it's our major watershed. And as you might imagine, then, the majority of our efforts are focused on the Wappingers and its tributaries, the Little Wappingers and the East Branch of the Wappingers. Secondary to that, in the orange, we've highlighted the Fishkill Creek. The Fishkill Creek system includes not only the Fishkill Creek, but also Sprout and Jackson Creeks. And then to the eastern side of the county, highlighted in that fluorescent yellow, that's the 10 Mile River system. And the 10-mile river system includes the Weebatuck, the Wassaic River creeks, as well as Swamp River. Swamp River is kind of unique in that it flows north.
Okay.
It flows north into the 10-mile river, and the 10-mile river then flows to the east where it joins the Housatonic. Now, you talk about the fisheries. The fisheries are very similar. The Wappingers Creek, just speaking about it, is really divided into two sections. From Pleasant Valley downstream is pretty much a put-and-take fishery.
Okay.
It's unique in that it's open year-round for fishing from the dam in Pleasant Valley downstream. DEC, the state DEC looks at it really not as an area where there's significant natural spawning going on, so that's why to them it's a great recreational opportunity. Now upstream of the dam in Pleasant Valley, of course, there is a restricted season and there is natural spawning that occurs. The natural spawning is primarily a brown trout fishery. The very northern extreme of the Wappinger system, we do have some native brook trout still. So those are in the small little tribs, the cold tribs. For the vast majority of all of those watersheds, they're freestone streams. I mean, they're runoff streams. There are some springs. The further north, particularly in the Wappinger system, you will find those springs, and that's where you're going to find the brookies.
Okay, great. And let's talk about, since they are freestone streams, there's going to be some variability as to the fishability, if you will, of them.
Sure.
I'm assuming the larger ones are fishable for a longer period during the year, but maybe I'm wrong. Is there some seasonality to any or all of these?
Yeah, well, certainly. One of the problems that any freestone stream is going to experience is the fact that periods of low water are very difficult for the fish. Low water temperatures are going to increase. So we really have to, particularly from, let's say, the middle of July on, you have to be really, really careful in terms of fishing opportunities. We don't want to stress the fish too much with the warm water, low oxygen situations. I think the other thing that we find is that the fish will concentrate themselves at those times of the year. When the water levels drop a little bit, the water temperatures increase, they'll seek out those thermal refuge areas where there are maybe some cold water seeps, maybe where there's some small springs. And then it becomes a challenge for you as an angler to try to find those.
Right, absolutely. So let's switch gears and talk about flies for a few minutes. Once again, I'll ask the same question. Is it pretty much the same flies on any of these rivers, or are there some favorites?
Well, pretty much. I mean, we're just talking about a few miles from one stream, one creek to another. There isn't significant variation in terms of the invertebrate life that exists in those streams. But one thing in particular that we'll find, and again, this is kind of universal for our area of the country, is that our flies tend to be larger and darker in terms of our mayflies in the spring. And then during the course of the season, they're going to get smaller. The hatches are going to get smaller, and they're going to get lighter in color. One of the things on the Wappingers in particular that we find is our caddis tend to be almost a predominantly green caddis.
Okay.
So that's why some of the flies that we've brought here to show off are just that. They're green caddis larvae. Those tend to be more successful for us. I think one thing that is a little unique is that the 10-mile seems to have a black stone population, a population of black stoneflies. It's not uncommon, for example, end of February or middle of March even, if there's snow on the banks of the river, to find these little black stoneflies crawling around. So early season on the 10-mile, a black stone imitation, a larva, can be very effective.
That's great.
Right.
Good to know, and very different.
Yeah.
One of the other things I like to ask is, dry flies versus nymphing. I mean, we know there's certain types of rivers and certain times of year where one can be more effective than the other. Do you have any general recommendations on nymphing versus fishing dries, or even streamers for that matter, on any of these?
Personally, I fish nymphs more than anything else, so
okay.
I'm kind of biased in that regard. But on the other hand, the latter part of April through May tends to be, and maybe even the first couple of weeks of June, that 8-week period there tends to be our prime dry fly season. So if you're really a devoted dry fly fisherman, that's the time to be out there. And like I said, April I would be fishing some fairly large, darker flies. By the time I got to June, I would be, smaller flies, lighter colors, sulfurs, that sort of thing.
And what do you recommend as far as the right size rod for these rivers, or is that also another variable for depending on which river it is?
These are small streams. These streams have significant tree canopy. So longer rods, by longer rod I'm talking about anything 9 foot and over, is really too much. You're not making long casts, you're making short casts, you're making short accurate casts, and longer rods really are out of place. A shorter rod, 8 foot, 7.5 foot is fine for these rivers. There's no need for a big rod. In terms of line weights, anywhere from the 3 to 5 is adequate.
Okay.
I wouldn't fish anything heavier than that. You really, you're not throwing a big fly where you need a big heavy line. So you can generally get by with a 3 to a 5.
And is it fair to say you should expect your share of longer riffles as well as shorter runs and faster water and that type of thing because of the size of these rivers?
Yeah, there's quite a mixture in terms of on the Wappingers Creek in particular, where there are some nice riffles and some flats. One of the problems with many of the flats is there's no structure. There's no structure in the river, and then as a result there aren't any fish. There's no place for the fish to hide. And that's one of the things that our chapter's been working on over the last few years, is trying to introduce structure into those areas so that they will hold fish.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. One of the things I want to mention too is I know in some of the other shows that we've had that there are special regulations in New York State for certain bodies of water. Mm-hmm. Is there anything outside of having your regular fishing license that you need to know to fish any of these rivers?
No, the only thing is, like I mentioned earlier, is the Wappingers Creek from Pleasant Valley downstream is open year-round. Within the county, that's the only area in terms of trout fishing that has any special regulation on it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just a regular statewide season.
Oh, great, great. And these are, as far as accessibility, most of these have access to state road or some sort of road, or is there a lot of hiking involved?
Not a lot of hiking, but like with any other fishing, if you're willing to walk, you're going to get into spots where people don't fish all that often. And that speaks to one of the things that our chapter has been involved in over the last 15 years or so, and that is the acquisition of public access. Mm-hmm. You may remember a number of years ago, the Iroquois gas pipeline came through this area. It moved gas, from natural gas that is, from Canada down to Long Island. And as a result of the construction of that pipeline, there was some damage done to the stream, and there was a monetary award. And our chapter benefited from a good portion of that. And then through that, we were able to go to landowners and enhance the state monies. State DEC has a program where they will buy fishing access from landowners. It's like a conservation easement. It provides access for fishing and fishing only. But it's not much in terms of how many dollars per foot the landowner will get. Well, with our money from Iroquois, then we were able to enhance that and go to the landowners and say, we can pay you a significant amount for your access. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that project, and over the years, we've acquired for the state about 10 miles of public access. So there is significant access, public access. And the only thing you need to get there is a fishing license.
Great. Right. That's great. Tell me a little bit about stocking and the stocking programs. Does the Mid-Hudson chapter assist with any of these? What are the stocking programs like? Yeah,
the stocking program on these watersheds, first of all, obviously it's done by the state, New York State DEC. They raise the fish. The fish chairman for the Dutchess County Sportsman's Federation, he coordinates it with the DEC hatchery, and will establish the dates of the stockings. Our Mid-Hudson TU members just help out. We're the Sherpas, we're the labor that carry the buckets of fish down to the streams. Stocking programs are generally done latter part of March through April. Each of the main watersheds, that's the Wappingers, the Fishkill, and the 10 Mile, will receive at least 2 stockings throughout the season. The last few years, the state has been very, very gracious to us in that they've provided a number of 2-year-old fish. Mm-hmm. So instead of the typical little 9-inch trout that would come out of the stocking truck, we're stocking anywhere from 15 to 17-inch fish.
It's a nice
both
fish.
We're both rainbows and browns.
Right.
Yeah.
And rough numbers?
Oh, numbers. I want to say last year's stocking was in the range of 40,000 fish.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit. That's great. Mm-hmm. So As long as I've been a member, Trout Unlimited has always been dedicated to improving education on our rivers, fish, and fly fishing. Could you tell us more about Mid-Hudson as far as your educational initiatives?
Yeah, we have two major educational initiatives that we support. One is, it has a unique name, it's the Brotherhood of the Jungle Cock. And the Brotherhood of the Jungle Cock was formed many years ago down in Maryland, and it's a multi-year program for children. Kids will usually start when they're around 7 or 8 years old, and they'll progress through the early teens. And the idea of the program is they come in, they learn about fly fishing, they learn about the environment, they learn about trout fishing and trout conservation. Mm-hmm. The first couple of years, maybe all the kids are doing is learning how to cast. And by the time they've reached their teens, if they've progressed through all of the programs mm-hmm. at Jungle Cock, then they're out on the stream on their own, they're tying their own flies, and we call that group the Masters Group. The other program that we support are the DEC summer camps. In our area, we have two camps in particular that we support. One is Camp DeBruce, okay, which is in Sullivan County. And that camp is designed more for younger kids, ages 11 to 13 or 14. Uh-huh. Now, beyond that, we have a camp up in the Adirondacks that our teenagers go to. And what we do as a chapter is we pay the tuition. If an individual has a child, a grandchild, or whatever who would like to go to the camp, our chapter can pay the tuition, and the parent just has to take the child on a Sunday afternoon, and then following Saturday go pick them up.
And how many kids participate in that?
Generally, we're supporting, in the summer camps, generally we're supporting about a dozen kids.
That's great. Yeah, it's a good size.
Yeah, it's a good group. We've had a number of, and then what we regularly like to do is have the kids come back and talk to the chapter members. Gee, thank you for allowing me to go to the camp, right, and this is what I did. And our membership then finds that very helpful because they realize, gee, their money is going to something worthwhile, mm-hmm, right? And these kids are really benefiting from it.
Very nice, very nice. I know that the chapter also has its own fly fishing and fly tying schools, and I was wondering if you could spend a few moments just telling us about each of those as far as what you learn, how long they last,
sure,
and so forth.
Sure. Our fly fishing and fly tying schools, we work in conjunction with the Arlington Central School District. Our fly fishing and fly tying schools are part of the Arlington School District's continuing ed program. This is a joint venture that we've been together with them for many years at this point, and it really works out well because those people who take the fly fishing part, they have the opportunity to spend an hour or so every night in the gymnasium casting. Okay. Here it could be the middle of February and it's freezing cold outside. You don't want to stand outside and cast. Well, now we have the gym. This year, our schools are starting on the 18th of February, okay, running for 5 weeks, 5 consecutive Wednesday nights through the middle of March. Registration is all done through Arlington School District, through their continuing ed program. Cost is $80 a person, and we enhance that a little bit. For example, if you were not a member of Trout Unlimited, your first-year membership to Trout Unlimited would be covered. So we just throw that in as a perk. If you are a member of TU and you come and you take our school, we'll extend your membership for a year. We'll pay your membership dues for the coming year.
Right, so there's a benefit right off the bat.
Significant benefit.
Right.
Significant benefit. One of the real issues I want to make clear is you can't take them both. They run concurrently. All right. It's the same hours, the same place, and so forth. And typically, what happens is people will take the fly fishing course, then they'll come back the next year and take the fly tying course.
Great. Great. And number of individuals that participate?
Oh, it varies from year to year. 2 years ago, for example, there were 23 students in the fly fishing school. Fly tying school tends to have fewer numbers in it, but we've had anywhere from 6 people in a class, like I said, up to 23. So,
good deal.
Yeah.
Now, are some of these some of the ones tied by any of the class?
No, these aren't from the class, but some of these are patterns that you would tie in the class. Okay. Some of the more basic nymphs that are on that chart.
And for those who aren't familiar with fly fish, can you maybe just show them the difference between what's a nymph and a dry fly and so forth?
Certainly. Over here we have dry flies. These are flies that are designed to float, representing the adult form of an aquatic insect, an adult mayfly or an adult caddis. And then here you have the immature forms, the larval forms of those same aquatic insects, mayflies and the caddis. You see this row here predominantly is green, and that's because those are the caddis.
Okay.
Right, those are our caddis. Now some of these more, the simpler ties, certainly we would cover those in the fly tying class. If a student comes to us who's a more intermediate tyer, I've offered an intermediate level of tying, and then we would get into something a little more complex, like this little crayfish pattern here. Right.
Okay. So I know you mentioned it earlier, but can you tell us just one more time about the monthly meetings? Because I want to make sure that the folks in the audience
sure.
get a chance to.
Yeah, the monthly meetings, third Monday of every month, 7:30 p.m. at the Arlington Post of the American Legion, and that's on DeGarmo Road in the town of Poughkeepsie.
Okay, great. I know that Mid-Hudson is involved in Project Healing Waters. Could you tell us a little bit about that program?
Yeah, Healing Waters is a program designed for veterans who've experienced some sort of disability as a result of their service. And every year, our chapter, in conjunction with the Catskill Mountain Chapter and the Croton Chapter, get together and sponsor this Healing Waters project over in the Catskills, primarily on the Willowemoc. And our chapter, the 3 chapters take 1 day of this 3-day project. And what we do is we provide food, we provide guided fishing opportunities for these guys. So basically it's a 3-day experience for the participants in the program. And then 1 day is covered by each chapter. Like I said, this is a program designed specifically for disabled vets, and it's very rewarding not only for our chapter members but also for the vets who, maybe before their disability were fishermen and kind of thought, well, gee, I kind of lost that part of my life. This is an opportunity for them to get back into it. And I remember a couple of years ago we had a guy who was visually handicapped, and we thought, how are we going to take this guy fishing if he can't see where he's going? And just through some verbal feedback and making sure that he was attuned to the feel of the rod and the line, he was doing phenomenal. He was, he could detect the slightest little bump on his fly, and he was catching fish and having a great time.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. I know that you're involved in some similar programs on more of a local level. I believe that there's some funding of a local handicap fishing spot as well?
Yes. A number of years ago, we worked with the city of Poughkeepsie, and we developed a handicap fishing access. It looks like a dock on Morgan Lake in the city of Poughkeepsie. And that project was completed, and we still had a desire to do something comparable to that. So we worked with the town of Fishkill, and they have a number of parks in the town. And one in particular runs right along the Fishkill Creek, and we thought this would be a great opportunity for us to also develop a handicap fishing access site. So with the town, we were able to develop this project. Our chapter is providing some of the funding. They're providing some of the labor and some of the work. And in the last couple of weeks here, the concrete pad has been poured, and the blacktop has been laid as well. So someone negotiating that area in a wheelchair can easily access from the parking lot right to this dock. There will be ADA compliant railings that will be built around the dock. Those are being built right now as we speak, just about by the guys in the town shops, right. And will probably be installed come springtime. And I'm sure that at that time the town will make arrangements to have some kind of big event about the christening of this handicap site.
Good deal. Yeah, please let me know when they
Absolutely.
do. That's great. The last thing I wanted to talk about is I know that you have, the Mid-Hudson Valley has a book, a fishing guide, if you will, and maybe you could give us just a little history on that. Yeah,
most every Trout Unlimited chapter has developed a fishing guide for its locale. And a number of years ago, we started on ours, and again, just like everybody else's, they morph, they grow, they develop a life of themselves. Ours started out very, very small, and then finally we've developed this large format guide that has some very detailed maps. The map that I showed you earlier, as a matter of fact, is the centerfold of this. And then what we've done is taken that county-wide map and broken it down into some very small sections and then highlighted the access points that I spoke about earlier. And let's put it this way, you cannot miss one of those access sites with these very detailed maps. In addition to that, we've got extensive information there about what flies to use throughout the season, and also there are sections for guys who are non-fly fishermen.
Okay.
We've got sections on bait fishing, we've got sections on spin fishing and so forth. And believe it or not, we've even got sections on catching fish other than trout.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, very good.
Right. Because of the simple fact we're on the Hudson River, and it's a great fishery for striped bass, for example, in May.
Great. Very nice. Sounds like a very thorough book. We just have a couple of minutes left. I want to make sure that before we finish that I get a chance to mention the best way to contact the chapter, which I believe is midhudsontu.com.
Yeah, the best way to reach us is through our website, www.midhudsontu.com. That has all of the information about all of our chapter events, activities, meetings, so on and so forth. It also has phone numbers, names, and email addresses for people within the chapter who do different things. So, you know, if you're interested in coming to a meeting, that information will be located there, identifying for you who the guest speaker, for example, is going to be that night. We also have a map on our website to show you how to get to that location. Right.
That's great. That's great. Well, that brings us to the end of our show. I'd like to thank Mark Searle from Mid-Hudson TU for joining me tonight. I'd like to thank the crew for making us all look good, and I'd like to thank you for watching On the Fly. Have a good evening.